Good morning, everybody. My name is Preet Bharara, and I am the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Today is another sad and disappointing day for every New Yorker who hasn't yet given up on the dream of honest government. The charges we unseal today demonstrate once again that a show-me-the-money culture seems to pervade every level of New York government. The criminal complaint describes an unappetizing smorgasbord of graft and greed involving 6 officials who together built a corridor of corruption stretching from Queens and the Bronx to Rockland County and all the way up to Albany. It ensnares Republicans as well as Democrats, elected officials as well as party leaders, and it details corruption in the city, the suburbs, as well as the Capitol. At the heart of the allegations is a sitting Democratic senator from Queens, Malcolm Smith, who believed he could and should be the mayor of New York City, and who, in the service of that ambition, tried to bribe his way to a shot at Gracie Mansion. As the complaint describes, Senator Smith drew up the game plan, and Republican Councilman Halloran essentially quarterbacked it by finding party chairmen who were wide open to receive bribes. For his efforts, Halloran, a former New York City police officer, not only profited handsomely, but also harbored dreams himself of becoming deputy police commissioner in a Malcolm Smith administration. According to the complaint, the bribes went to top-ranking Republican Party officials in New York City, whose approval was required to let Smith run on the Republican ballot, which is where he believed he had the best shot to reach the pinnacle of city government. All told, as the complaint describes, $80,000 in cash was promised or paid to Bronx Republican Party leader Joseph Savino and Queens leader Vincent Tabone. Meanwhile, in Rockland County, both the mayor and deputy mayor are charged with corruption over a real estate deal that Senator Smith also allegedly agreed to support for corrupt reasons. Now, before I get into some of the details in today's complaint, let me introduce and thank our partners in this case. I'm joined here today by our partner in this and so many important public corruption matters, the FBI, led by George Venizelos, the Assistant Director in charge of the New York Field Office, and April Brooks, the Special Agent in charge of the Criminal Division. Also joining me are Tom Zugamy, the Rockland County District Attorney, and Paul Modica, Spring Valley Police Chief. Both of their offices provided invaluable assistance, I can tell you. I want to commend and thank the dedicated special agents and investigators who worked so hard on this case, including Thomas Holmes, Julie Brown, William McGrogan, and Timothy Lozen from the FBI, and also Martin Anson, the Rockland County DA's investigator. And of course, I want to commend the outstanding work, as always, from the career prosecutors in my office who have worked so hard in such a dedicated fashion on this case, as they always do. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Douglas Bloom and Alvin Bragg, supervised by Brenda McGuire, Steve Richin, Mimi Roca, and Perry Carbone. Now let me spend a few minutes describing some of the specific conduct alleged today. The complaint sets forth 3 bribery schemes involving cash payments of tens of thousands of dollars to elected officials and party leaders. As alleged, the charged elected officials agreed to direct state, city, and local dollars, not for the public interest, but for their own self-interest. First, as I mentioned, the complaint charges a bribery scheme relating to Malcolm Smith's efforts to run as a Republican for New York City mayor. As alleged, Malcolm Smith was bent on becoming mayor. He was a Democrat, but believed his best shot was to run as a Republican. That was a problem because under a statute known as Wilson-Pakula, Senator Smith needed the green light from at least 3 of the 5 Republican County Party chairmen in order to qualify for the Republican ballot. So what did he do? As charged, he decided to bribe his way onto that ballot. As described further, Smith broached the subject of his mayoral ambition with 2 men he believed were real estate developers and sought their help in influencing the Republican County chairman. In fact, these 2 men were working with the government. One was an undercover FBI agent, and the other was a cooperating witness. As alleged, Smith had repeated recorded conversations with these two men, sometimes in a hotel room, about making payments to party leaders so that he could run on the Republican line for mayor. He allegedly discussed which chairmen were susceptible to bribes, how much to pay them in total, how much to pay up front versus how much to pay after the deal was done, and making sure to know how much, making sure that there was no traceback to Smith. In return, as described, Senator Smith expressly agreed to then direct $500,000 in New York State funding for improvement of a road that would benefit the supposed real estate project the two claimed that they were putting together in Spring Valley and Rockland County. Among other things, the undercover agent and the cooperating witness then approached New York City Councilman Dan Halloran, who was a Republican, on Smith's behalf to get to those county chairmen. The cooperating witness and undercover ended up paying over $20,000 to Councilman Halloran for setting up meetings with Bronx Republican County Chairman Joseph Savino and Queens Vice Chairman Vincent Tabone. Finally, after a lot of discussion as described in the complaint, this past Valentine's Day, the cash payoffs were made to Savino and to Tabone. Specifically, the undercover paid Tabone $25,000 in cash while sitting in a car and promised another $25,000 after his committee formally signed the certificate approving Smith to run as a Republican for mayor. Savino, as the complaint describes, came a little cheaper. The undercover paid Savino $15,000 in cash, also while sitting in a car, and promised another $15,000 after he formally signed a similar certificate that would allow Senator Smith to run for mayor as a Republican. Second, separate and apart from this bribery scheme, the complaint outlines the latest scandal involving the attempted corrupt diversion of city council discretionary funds. As alleged, Councilman Halloran also accepted bribes in exchange for agreeing to steer some of his so-called member item funds to the undercover agent and the cooperating witness through a company he thought that they controlled. When the cooperating witness asked Halloran for $20,000 from the council discretionary fund, the councilman responded in a recording, quote, "Absolutely. That's easy. That's not even an issue. Not even an issue. In fact, I might even be able to get you more." Close quote. Ultimately, as alleged, Councilman Halloran was true to his word and agreed to direct up to $80,000 to a company he believed was controlled by the undercover agent and the cooperating witness for absolutely no service in return. In exchange, Halloran allegedly received more than $18,000 in cash and approximately $6,500 in campaign contribution checks from straw donors for his unsuccessful bid for Congress. Third, closing out the loop, the complaint alleges that Normie Jasmine and Joseph Desmarais, the mayor and deputy mayor of Spring Valley, respectively, corruptly approved a sale of property in Spring Valley at the request of the undercover agent and the cooperating witness. Desmarais accepted more than $10,000 in cash bribes, according to the complaint, in exchange for his vote on that sale. And in exchange for her vote, Jasmine allegedly demanded to be a secret part owner in the company that purchased the property within Spring Valley. That's the real estate project that Senator Smith believed he was assisting and directing money to. As recently as March 21st of this year, Senator Smith made it crystal clear that he wanted the deal done, he wanted the county chairman on board, and that he wanted to be the mayor of New York City. If you just look to the chart to my left, you'll see a recording and a quote from it from Senator Smith, where he says, among other things, quote, "Let's close the deal," close quote. Now, if you take a look to the chart to my right, you'll see that sort of graphically depicts all the interests that were received by people who we charged in this case. I've described the schemes to you while I was standing at the podium, but let me just point out to you that every single defendant who's charged in this case, according to the complaint, received a particular significant personal interest, financial or otherwise. You have, as I mentioned, the mayor and the deputy mayor of Spring Valley, who received respectively a hidden interest in the real estate project that I described, and the other receiving $10,500 in cash bribes, allegedly. You have the two county chairmen, the Bronx Republican County Chairman and the Queens Republican vice chairman, who each received respectively $15,000 in cash bribes and $25,000 in cash bribes. And you have New York City Councilman Daniel Halloran in connection with two different schemes, getting $20,500 in cash bribes for access to the county chairman in connection with the first scheme, and in connection with a different scheme, receiving $18,300 in cash bribes for official acts that he agreed to perform, and $6,500 in straw donor contributions. So you have all those people circling around, and then of course you have Malcolm in the middle. Now the case against these defendants will unfold in federal court, and each is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. But let me just spend a minute making a general point about public corruption. Every New Yorker should be disheartened and dismayed by the sad state of affairs in this great state. From time to time, the question arises, how common is corruption in New York? I can tell you, based on the cases that we have brought and continue to bring, it seems downright pervasive. But don't take my word for it. Consider the words of City Councilman Daniel Halloran, caught on tape in this case. After allegedly receiving a $7,500 cash bribe, he says to the cooperating witness, and you can see it on the chart here again to my left, quote, "Money is what greases the wheels, good, bad, or indifferent." During that same meeting, Halloran allegedly says, quote, this is also on the chart to my left, quote, "That's politics. That's politics. It's all about how much. And that's our politicians in New York. They're all like that, all like that. And they get like that because of the drive that the money does for everything else. You can't do anything without the money." And of course, in the actual recording, there is a colorful expletive that precedes money. These words should echo in the ears of every New Yorker who still holds on to the dream of honest government. That's our politicians in New York. They're all like that. After statements like this, and after the string of public corruption scandals that we continue to expose, many may understandably fear that there is no vote that is not for sale, no office without a price, and no official clean of corruption. Many may understandably resign themselves to the sad truth that perhaps the most powerful special interest in politics is self-interest. As I said once before, every time a politician is arrested in New York, it should not feel like a scene from Groundhog Day, and yet it does. Now, I think that we have the best corruption-fighting team in the business, with our partners in state and local government, in the FBI and others, and we will continue to pursue and to punish every corrupt official that we can find. But the public corruption crisis in New York is more than a prosecutor's problem. Putting dirty politicians in prison may be necessary, but it is not sufficient. And the dream of honest government cannot come to pass unless there is a real change in the culture. Because what can we expect when there continues to be, even after a parade of politicians have been hauled off to prison, a lack of transparency, a lack of self-disclosure, a lack of self-policing, a lack of will, and a failure of leadership? What can we expect when transgressions seem to be tolerated and nothing seems ever to change? New Yorkers should demand more. Federal prosecutors and federal agents, as demonstrated in the case we bring today and other cases we have brought and that we will bring, are doing everything we can to proactively attack the corruption problem. And it's time that others stepped up to the plate also. It's now my pleasure and honor to bring to the podium our partner in this case and so many others, Assistant Director in charge of the FBI in New York, George Venizelos.
Thank you, Preet. Good morning. This morning, FBI agents arrested 6 people who violated the public trust and put personal ambition and greed ahead of the interests of the people they were elected or appointed to serve. The 6 defendants were involved in 3 bribery schemes that saw tens of thousands of dollars change hands. The common thread was the evidence of the three schemes was mainly gathered by two participants. Unbeknownst to the corrupt officials, these two were working for the FBI. One is a cooperating witness. The other is an FBI agent working undercover and posing as a wealthy real estate developer. The fact is, while the cooperating witness and the undercover did great work, they did not have to twist any arms. The defendants were eager to take bribes and have bribes paid for on their behalf. Democratic State Senator Malcolm Smith needed the blessing of 3 New York City Republican Party chairmen to run for mayor on the Republican line. He engaged the services of the cooperating witness and the undercover to arrange for bribes to get those approvals. In exchange for paying the bribes for Smith, the cooperating witness and undercover were promised a $500,000 contract in the state transportation funding for their Spring Valley real estate project. City Councilman Daniel Halloran was paid more than $20,000 to arrange bribe payments to Bronx Republican Chairman Joseph Savino and Queens Republican Vice Chairman Vincent Tabone so they would grant the Wilson Percula letters for Smith. After a series of meetings to negotiate the price for their approval, Savino and Tabone each met with Halloran and the undercover at separate times in the same restaurant to receive their payoffs from the undercover. When Tabone, the Queens Republican vice chairman, was asked if he could deliver the Wilson Percula letter, he boasted to the undercover, "Nobody else runs the party, I run the party." Clearly aware the scheme was illegal, Tabone patted down the undercover to see if he was wearing a recording device. Halloran, a former police officer, was an eager intermediary. In addition to the money he took for acting as a go-between for Smith, Halloran also took more than $20,000 in bribes and illegal campaign contributions to steer $80,000 in city council money to the cooperating witness and the undercover for a no-work consulting contract. Spring Valley had its own crooked politicians. Mayor Normami Jasmine and Deputy Mayor Joseph Desmarais conspired with the cooperating witness and the undercover to rig the sale of a parcel of Spring Valley property. In return for concealed ownership interest in the project for Jasmine and cash money to Desmarais, the mayor and deputy mayor sold their votes on the project and their influence over the other board members. In a piece of pure theater, they staged the presentations to the village board. The mayor knew the 3 supposedly unrelated developers were all in collusion. She did not know that all 3 were FBI agents. Jasmine and Desmarais were not voting the interests of the people they represented. They were pursuing their own self-interest. Elected officials are called public servants because they're supposed to serve the public. Public service is not supposed to be a shortcut to self-enrichment. In all of their dealings with the defendants, the cooperating witness and the undercover encountered greedy people in positions of power. People in New York, in Spring Valley, in any city or town in this country rightfully expect their elected or appointed representatives to hold themselves at a high standard of conduct. At a bare minimum, we should expect public officials to obey the law. These defendants did not obey the law. They broke the law and the public trust. There was a price to pay for this kind of betrayal. I want to thank Rockland County DA Thomas Zugabe and Spring Valley Police Chief Paul Modica for their assistance in the investigation. Thanks always to U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara, and in this case, Assistant U.S. Attorneys Douglas Bloom and Alvin Bragg. And finally, congratulations to the undercover FBI agent and special agents Tom Holmes and Bill McRogan, Acting Supervisor Carl Cotoro, and Supervisory Special Agent Pam McGovern for their outstanding work in this investigation. Thank you.
There may be a question or two. I'm happy to take them.
Mr. Barara, you have this recording of Mr. Crowe allegedly saying nobody else runs the party, I run the party. Where does the acting party chairman deliver the figure into all this?
There's nothing in the complaint that makes any detailed reference to the party chairman, but as you point out, the complaint makes clear that the vice chairman said that he had the ability to make sure that the Wilson-Pakula certification could be made, and that he was prepared to do it for a price.
Was there any indication as to what the reaction of Malcolm Smith was to his maintaining that, in terms of asking whether Ragusa would be on board with it?
There's nothing in the complaint with respect to, I don't believe, what Senator Smith said about the chairman, but there's a lot in the complaint, some of which I alluded to in my remarks and at the chart, where Senator Smith talks a lot about who is able to be bought and for how much and on what terms and on what timetable. Yeah.
Can you talk about the discretionary funds situation? This is obviously not the first time the panel will chat about discretionary funds in the City Council of New York. But here we are again. So is it still broke?
You should direct that question to other people, not to me. What I can tell you in the complaint is that the agreement was made to divert discretionary funds up to $80,000 in a particular direction, but it was not actually accomplished because we made arrests in this case.
Mr. Attorney?
Yeah.
What do you think of the, because part of this was triggered by or around discussions that if you're not a member of the Republican Party, if you want a Republican, if you're a Democrat or independent, you need the support of the three of the five New York City Republican Party leaders that have an opportunity to run on the Republican line or run in a primary. Can you comment on that law? Do you think is there anything that needs to be changed, or what?
I don't comment on federal laws, much less state laws, and it's a law that's on the books, and people tried to find a way around that.
Mr. Bharara, you said that the public corruption crisis in New York is more than a prosecutor's problem, and it's time for others to step up to the plate. Could you name some names? Who would you like to see step up to the plate?
Look, I think it's a problem for all of us. It's a problem for you as citizens of New York. It's a problem for all of us as citizens of New York. I think that anytime you have a situation where something happens again and again and again, and it happens on the part of people who should know better, and it happens on the part of people who should be able to engage in a decent and reasonable calculus about whether or not it's worth going to jail and being separated from your liberty for a few $1,000s, that something is broken in the system. We spend a lot of time in this often going after corruption on Wall Street, and I spend some amount of my time as an extracurricular activity talking about a culture problem in certain quarters on Wall Street in connection with insider trading and all sorts of other schemes that we have been uncovering along with the FBI and other partners. And in those contexts, I think it's appropriate to talk about whether or not a culture needs to change and people need to do things. And so I think there are a lot of folks in and around the state who are people of goodwill and decency who are in a position to do something about the structure that exists in Albany and in other places.
And when you look at the list of this office and others, Libel, Villela, Montserrat, Bruno, Kruger, Espada, Huntley, Gonzalez, Smith, is there a particular problem with the New York State Senate?
I don't know if there's a particular problem in the New York State Senate. From what I understand in the papers, not every state legislature has this degree of criminality that's been exposed. So clearly there is some problem here, and something more than simply a blunt prosecutor's tool needs to be brought to bear. We spend a lot of time investigating a lot of folks, and we bring cases that are appropriate to bring when we have evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. But just because certain people are charged criminally doesn't mean that we catch everybody. It's not possible for any prosecutor, given resources we have, to catch every single person who may have crossed the ethical or the criminal line. And when you have as many people as we have that you listed in the premise of your question, it makes you wonder whether or not New York has a bigger problem than some other places.
In this investigation, as you look at it, did all the players, really think that it was plausible that Malcolm Smith had a chance to be mayor of New York? He's not seen as a heavy hitter in the.
I don't comment on state laws or federal laws. I also am not a political pundit. I will tell you from the complaint that in the recorded conversations that Malcolm Smith thought it was plausible and was willing to put a lot at risk and had a lot of conversations about how plausible he thought it was. In addition, as I pointed out and as described in the complaint, City Councilman Halloran, who is a Republican, thought about what would happen in a Malcolm Smith administration and on multiple occasions talked about what might happen to him, and arguably was a reason why he was engaging in some of this conduct, separate and apart from greed. There was also ambition. He on one occasion mentions the possibility of becoming, as I mentioned, deputy police commissioner. On another occasion he mentions, as described in the complaint, the possibility of becoming deputy mayor. So there were people who were involved in the scheme who thought it was a realistic possibility.
Sir, I'm not sure if you said this. What was the smoking gun, if you will, that got the FBI involved in the first place that realized that there was some shady dealings going on? Could there be other people named?
The investigation is ongoing. I didn't say there was a smoking gun. I didn't describe it. It was in connection with evidence that the FBI collected through confidential witness, a cooperating witness, and other sources.
And in Rockland County, Senator Carlucci, he was mentioned in the indictment that the state, going to the state senator, is he involved at all in this?
The complaint doesn't identify any senator, but I can tell you that the state senator that is referred to, well, not by name, there's no evidence at all of any misdeeds on the part of that person.
All the money involved in this, the alleged bribes, is everything, all the money listed up there with government money?
I believe that's the case. Yeah, in this case, yes, that's the case.
You mentioned that
The complaint references a couple FBI agents that were down in North Carolina. Were they also working on the situation with Assemblyman Boylan?
I'm not going to comment on that.
You mentioned that there was a lack of transparency in the laws that makes it hard for people to sort of uncover this kind of thing. Can you just elaborate on where you see a lack of transparency that makes it difficult to uncover this?
Yeah, I don't want to get into. I'm not a legislator, and I'm not an ethicist. But I think if you take a look at what rules of disclosure are in New York, they're not as transparent as they are in other places. And if you are just a citizen in New York and you read about the debates with respect to disclosure, you see that not every time, but often when people are putting through proposals for greater disclosure, those are opposed. And I think people who care about making sure that the bad deeds are punished and miscreants go punished, that more disclosure is better.
What kind of punishment are these defendants facing?
I think the statutory maximums are listed at the back of the press release. In some cases, it's on count 1, it's 5 years is the max, and on counts 2 through 6, 20 years is the max. Of course, those are just the maximums, and the sentencing guidelines come into play, and it doesn't necessarily mean that anybody's going to receive that length of time in prison.
The unlikeliness of the success of the scheme, the unlikeliness of the idea that Malcolm Smith would become the Republican nominee or mayor, does that ever play a role in whether to bring a prosecution?
Yeah, I suppose it can in some cases. What we are talking about is the acceptance of bribes, of cash money, in automobiles in order to get onto a ballot, which can affect not only that person's chances at gaining a particular office, but also other people's chances in gaining office. So if you're talking about whether or not it's a serious offense, even though some people might think it's an implausible thing to ultimately accomplish, in America, and again, I'm also not a professor of American politics and elections, but many, many elections in this state and in this country have been won or lost because there was someone else in the race. And so anytime anybody tries to undermine the will of the people and what the law is with respect to getting on a ballot or with respect to what how votes should take place, that's incredibly serious.
Mr. Attorney, are you still looking at possibly other leads or about possibly other candidates trying to get on the Republican
I'm not, I just said, as I said before, the investigation is ongoing. I'm not going to comment on any specific avenues.
What the Spring Valley land may have been developed?
Nothing that's beyond what's in the complaint, and I think it doesn't go into that detail.
The complaint mentions a meeting that was supposed to happen tomorrow, April 3rd. Do they have the impression that this was all going to be finalized tomorrow?
I think the complaint makes clear that that was an important date in connection with Senator Smith's alleged interest in getting the Wilson-Bakula certifications and getting on the ballot. That's all I'll say about that. Yeah.
There's a report that John Castellaneta, one of the candidates, said he was aware of the ongoing investigation of the photo. Do you know why he was connected to it or why he wasn't aware?
Not going to. This is beyond the scope of the complaint. Okay. Thanks, everybody.